Morning. Morning, all. It's actually Kye Rymer.
Kye Rymer.
I heard you said Key. But it's a pleasure to be here this morning. Let me get... I adopt the protocol that has been established. The concept of universal service in communications has been around since the 1980s in postal services and later adopted by telecommunications in the mid-90s. The aims of universal services are laudable. These include to promote the availability of quality services at just, reasonable, and affordable rates, to increase access to advanced telecommunication services throughout the nation, to advance the availability of such services to all consumers, including those in low-income, rural, insular, and high-cost areas at rates that are reasonably comparable to those charged in urban areas. However, in small island developing countries such as the Caribbean, the delivery has not always met expectations. This is the case in the British Virgin Islands. In an effort to remove monopolized telecommunications, we moved to liberate the market with the best intentions, relying on international expertise to deliver the outcomes we endeavored to realize. Our policy was geared to enable competition to drive penetration into the sister islands, thus negating the need for an obligation for universal service across all the islands in the territory. Certainly, all the best practices were utilized, but may not have taken into account the uniqueness of our jurisdiction. The BVI is a small geographically, and its population is even smaller. By comparison, our neighbors in the United States Virgin Islands, they're about 5 minutes away from us. Those islands are smaller in size and has larger population. For example, St. Thomas is the main island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the population is 65,000 inhabitants, whereas the BVI entire population amongst our 60 islands and keys dispersed throughout the territorial seas is only 35,000 people. This is important as it has its major impact on the economics of universal service. Affordability and access are important features of universality, yet our legislation under Section 29 allow the operators to determine the prices in line with supply and demand, which we realize have been disadvantageous. This is a challenge as operators in our market do not compete on prices and may have, in fact, used leader pricing as their model when entering the jurisdiction. What's more, the BVI only has roughly about 20,000 unique subscribers who may utilize various services and platforms across our 4 licensed operators. With such a small subscriber base and no real differential there in the limited market forces, the result, the operators cherry-pick areas which would net them highest profitability and neglect others. Many of those areas which are neglected maintain levels of basic service with poor quality of service. This remains the case today. Furthermore, operators have argued that our terrain makes it costly to deploy advanced services and that the cost of doing business in such terrain is burdensome. However, I don't agree when taking into consideration our shared geography and topography across the Caribbean region. Additionally, it is argued by the operators that further levying of fees will place undue burden on their business and the marketplace. Yet, to a large extent, their financial records do not bear this out. We have observed that operators enjoy strong earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, strong margins, and therefore should be able to fulfill their fiduciary obligations under the law. What's more, all operators would have taken these legal requirements into considerations prior to obtaining their licenses. The status quo can no longer be maintained as we are committed to ensuring full compliance. What we have in common, to our detriment, is insufficient cooperation amongst Caribbean nations, which allow common market players to enjoy a degree of influence on our decisions. To truly tackle and successfully implement universal service, we have to take a comprehensive look at our industries together. While we hold fast to the definition of universal service, there are other underlying issues that we must tackle. Access will never be full access without the introduction of some form of net neutrality clause in our legislation, which we don't have at this point in the BVI. Without this, operators are free to manage their networks as they see fit, which we commonly refer to as throttling. This distorts, by definition, true universal service. Providing homogeneous connectivity to all residents is also our ambition. It cannot be patch and go. Simply put, we cannot condemn residents in remote areas to the least functional and cheapest technology. Universal service also means that every resident must have equal access to all technology at reasonable costs. This also means the development of a broadband policy to undergird universal connectivity, which cannot be separate and distinct from utility of the internet. Finally, we have learned from harsh lessons of the past that implementing any policy, especially where there are costs to the market involved, should be preceded by a proper assessment. To this end, we are conducting a thorough market assessment and a network audit to fully contextualize the cost of doing business, the pricing strategies and models in the marketplace, and the capacity to deliver universal service. These two studies will also inform legislative changes in addition to the work done by the Caribbean Telecommunications Unit, the CTU. And if we are to be collectively successful as a region, then there must be an enhanced cooperation between our regulators and our governments, particularly for information sharing, since we basically all have the same providers. I thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share our perspective as we welcome any assistance in improving our telecommunication service, especially as it relates to universal service. Thank you.